Somewhere along the way, a lot of us stop recognizing the person in the mirror. I know that feeling because I spent the last 20 years losing and gaining the same 20 pounds. And what finally changed for me is while I focused on the big picture of workout and run, there were all of these small little habits sabotaging any progress that I would make. So as we go through these 21 different habits, see which one is really playing out in your life right now. Because even changing one or two of these can completely change your results. So let's get right into it. Number 1, eating too healthy. Look, I know that might sound silly because sometimes people are already eating pretty healthy, but they still can't lose the fat. There's certain foods that are very caloric and dense for the type of volume that they can bring on making your tummy feel satisfied. Like think peanut butter or nuts. They're very small, or it's a very small amount for a high calorie number. It would take a lot of that high calorie thing to make you feel satisfied. And side note, when I eat extremely healthy, I'm more likely to find myself in a situation where I'm like, I want the junk. So I wouldn't say no to myself on occasional things that aren't necessarily healthy, but eat them in smaller amounts. You know that French toast drowned in syrup is a lot. I found that allowing myself to eat even smaller amounts of this item that is, considered junk, I'm better off doing a little bite of that than that constant thought in my head, like, oh my gosh, I just want to taste it. I just want to, right? It's the food noise. So being able to say like, I can have that if I want to, actually makes you eat a little less of it, along with your routine being pretty healthy. But if you never tracked calories before, you should do it for a little bit just so you can understand, okay, what am I looking at? When I look at a plate, you can guesstimate. With experience, you can guesstimate better than if you didn't have experience. Moving on to number 2, this is drinking your calories. If you're in a phase where you want to control what's going on and have more awareness of what you're putting in your body, drinking your calories is a quick way to skip out on a meal and be starving late. For example, I love bubble tea. I love Thai milk bubble tea. I love brown sugar bubble tea. And I actually looked up online, I'll put it here. Gongcha large boba tea is over 700 calories. My meals aren't 700 calories. So think about when I wasn't counting, I would have a bubble tea maybe 2-3 times a week. That's 3 additional meals that don't feel like meals because I'm drinking it. I probably have the drink with the meal. So consider if the drink is 700 calories and my meal is 500 or 700 calories, in 30 minutes, I just ate my daily intake. And I'm not saying don't have it. I'll occasionally have a bubble tea, but on a weekly basis, I probably was in a deeper deficit to be able to afford that while I'm in a loose fat phase. And because we're talking about habits here, no, I'm not buying boba 3 times a week anymore. But it's not just that, right? It's your morning coffee, how many sugars, how much cream is in there. Depending on the creams, 1 spoon is 100 calories. There's better creamers that can allow you to maybe 30 calories a spoon or something like that. Sugar is like 15 calories a teaspoon. So just realize because you're drinking it, it doesn't mean it's 0, right? It matters. Smoothies, alcohol. Consider if you're going out to eat and you're gonna already have an appetizer, you're gonna have a main or share a main, you're probably gonna do dessert, and you're drinking alcohol. You can have anything you want, but also consider in a day, what are you putting in your body? So if you're going to do dessert and you really want dessert, then maybe skip out on the alcohol. So the little extra that you're eating, it's focused on that. Or if you're not feeling too sweet, but you want a few drinks with the friends, skip out on the dessert. Have some protein with some alcohol. Number 3, skipping on protein. And this is so important, and it's hard for me because for me to take the amount of protein that I need on a daily basis, I really have to try. But protein is one of the biggest things that makes you feel full. It keeps you satisfied. The muscles love it. Yet a lot of healthy meals, they're very carb dense. Granola bowls, acai bowls, smoothie bowls, salads with barely any protein and 300 calories in dressing. When you eat those foods that are high in carbs, you're going to end up hungry again. And it's not because you lack discipline. It's because you ate a meal that lacked that full composition that you would need to feel satisfied. But enough about food, because that's sometimes not the only thing that can sabotage your progress. Sometimes it's your workouts, and this is for the baddie that's training extremely hard. And look, this took me years to figure out. The harder I worked out, the more my hunger was insatiable. The hungrier I was. And when you're constantly thinking about food because your tummy's rumbling or you just feel so hungry, it's more likely that you're going to eat more than you should, especially if you're not counting your calories. And that can easily creep up on you and erase your caloric deficit, which leads me into the next one, overestimating your workouts. I used to think a workout would burn way more calories than it actually does. I started considering that if I want this 300 calorie donut, I need to be on the Stairmaster for an hour to burn 300 calories. When you start doing math like that, well, like, okay, is this really worth the cost that it takes? Because a lot of times when you're working out, it's easier for you to think, I earned it. And look, I know if you burned 300 calories, technically you can have 300 calories and it'll reset you back as if you never worked out. But in reality, when people are overestimating their workouts, it's not just eating back their workout, it's eating back their workout and then some. So that's how you actually cancel out your workout and actually go backwards. But even if food and workouts are dialed in, like you are locked in, girlfriend, there's another lifestyle shift that actually happens. And it has to do with how we live our lives on a daily basis. I spoke about this in another video. This is the one that makes you think, why don't I have the body I had? Why don't I look like this? Why don't I fit in these jeans? And it's really because as an adult, think about it, you're sitting all day. I don't know if you're driving to work and then sitting, driving for work, or walking a little bit and then sitting for 8 hours, taking bathroom breaks. As an adult, you're not out and about. There are a few exceptions where people have jobs that they're moving around. Because look, you can work out for an hour of your day and then be still and sit for the remainder of your day, especially if you had a really hard workout. You know, when you start feeling your legs, it hurts to sit, it hurts to get up, it hurts to do anything. You think you're gonna walk around, get up and move more? No, you're sore. But look, science says what science says. Our bodies are meant to move, which, you know what, is an easy transition to number 7, no daily movement. Like I mentioned, when we were younger, we were out and about, we were outside. We really were. But adult life looks very different. If you're taking your kids to the park, you're probably sitting down while they burn calories. You drive to work, you sit all day. So movement has to be intentional. So being able to really intentionally think about, how am I going to add movement to my day on a daily basis? What time is it better for me to do it? How long can I do it for at these times? How will this pockets of my day fill up with movement so that at the end of the day, it's felt seamless? And believe it or not, the more you move, the more tired you get. And this is really important. The same way you want to tire out your kids, let them run around so they can sleep really well. Guess what? We need that. We really need that in our lives. Sleep is the most underrated for fat loss. If you can't pick anything that I tell you to do, make sure you're sleeping good. At least you're keeping stress and cortisol low, not causing you to get insane cravings. Walk and sleep. If you can't do anything else, do those 2 things. Because when you don't sleep well, your body not only gets cravings, it gets cravings for a very specific type of food. Yeah, the good ones. And that's just because you're exhausted. But there's another hidden factor that makes this whole process very hard. It has to do with stress. It has to do with sleep, fatigue, all of this. Number 9, it's stress eating. I don't know if you've done it. I definitely have done it. I mentioned cortisol. If you don't know what cortisol is a hormone that your body releases when you are stressed the heck out. And why does it go for high energy foods like comfort foods, soul food, that banging snack? It's really, you're just stressed out and you're looking for some comfort somewhere. So you have to navigate your comfort. What else can you find that soothes you, that makes you feel more comfort in a time of stress? Sometimes when I would get stressed, I would leave my house and I would go for a walk because I'm adding movement and I'm also taking a breather before I respond to that text and go off. And that kind of leads me to the next thing, also relating to food. It's that if you're not stressed per se, but you're still emotional eating is a huge thing. I've also done that because food isn't just fuel. It's comfort, it's celebration, it's stress relief. Because a lot of times, people aren't eating because they're hungry. They're eating because they're overwhelmed, they're bored, or they're just trying to unwind. I've done all 3 of those. Which leads me to another thing we actually didn't do when we were younger, because we were probably already asleep because our parents put us to bed, which is late night eating. We as adults were up late, we had a busy day, we finally get a pocket in time to, indulge in something. Yeah, well, bedtime's in like 30 minutes, and guess what? That 350, 500 calorie snack, even 200 calorie snack is about to stay on your body for a minute. Not only that, but because you're going to sleep, your body's going to keep running and digesting instead of healing yourself, instead of giving you the rest you need to wake up the next day and not be stressed out, not stress eat. So you start seeing how one thing pours into the other. You're sleeping late, you're not getting a good quality rest. You're then eating late, not allowing your body to digest and fast properly. And that's also staying on you. There's no way for that energy to be spent. And at midnight, I'm sure you're not reaching for the healthiest option. It's gonna be a comfort food snack, and those add up quickly with nowhere to go, no energy, no way to expend that energy. So think about that. These are some good ones, huh? If you can, take a little moment to like the video. I'm gonna continue on with the rest of the segment. Number 12 is social eating pressure. Look, as we get older, a lot of our life revolves around meeting for drinks, meeting for a bite, having brunch, going to this new viral spot, celebrating something, and saying no sometimes can feel like the loser move to do. So people go and they eat a lot more than they planned. They've been good for a while, and then they go and they don't want to look weird, they don't want to be awkward, they don't want to be like chukangly. So you go and you behave as if all of the goals are off the way. And here's how I personally manage that in my life. If I know I have 2 different outings in a week, well, up until the outing, I'm going to hold back on how many treats I give myself or high calorie meals I give myself, because I know, like a countdown, I know in 48 hours, I'm going to eat at that great restaurant and I'm going to want a little more bites than usual. So I'm going to be in a higher caloric deficit throughout the week. And then when I get to the restaurant, look, they're cooking with butter, they're cooking with oil, they're drowning things in sauces and delicious marinades. So if you're looking at a steak, it's not ounce per ounce that amount of calories. You always have to round up for these kind of things. And you have to think about, okay, if I am going out with my friends on Friday, then Monday to Thursday, I've really got to be on my I really can't be deviating from what I want because I want Friday really bad. So you have to kind of give and play. Just like when we were kids, our parents said, okay, you want to go to Sally's house, but I need you to finish homework. okay, you want to go to the restaurant on Friday, but I need you to really stay on point before that. Because the biggest patterns with trying to lose fat, it actually has to do less with food and more about your mindset with things. So let's cover inconsistent routines. Look, I get it. Consistency is boring, but it's powerful. When routines constantly change, new diet, new workout plan, new strategy, new something every few weeks, your body doesn't actually get a moment to get to homeostasis, to get to a foundational point where it can build. Your body and your habits, they need to stabilize. You need to have something constantly working. Leading me to the next one, relying on motivation. Look, you're not going to always be motivated. That's just, I could tell you this right now. It's not something it's not always going to be there at all. The thought in my head of, I don't want to do this, runs in my mind time. If I live a life of only doing what I want to do, then I'm not going to live a full and beautiful life the way that I imagine it. Which is crazy to say. You would think that the more freedoms I give myself, the better my life will be. That's not true. And look, motivation feels great while it's there. But motivation is temporary, the same way your fresh breath is temporary. No one wakes up excited to work out every day. I mean, unless you're Arnold Schwarzenegger as an exception, but that's the exception, not the rule. So just know in advance, even if right now you're like stoked, you're doing your research, you got everything in order, you're motivated, you're pumped, just know there's gonna be a day you're not pumped. And maybe do something about it. I don't know if it's writing, walking, something that is therapeutic to you where you have an outlet of saying, look, I really do, but let me do this thing that just keeps me from not deviating. Because trust me, every time that I'm like, let's throw the goals out, like I really don't care anymore, I just need this thing, whatever it is, and I deviate for a whole weekend. By Monday, I am so sad with myself that it's not worth the 48 hours I spent deviating. I can tell you on the other side, it's not worth it. And I'm sure you've experienced that on your own. And you can also feel, hey, that was not worth it. I wouldn't do that again, but we do. So just know progress comes from routines. Focus on fixing your routine. Everything else will come into place. Which leads me to that weekend eating. That's huge. You think that from Monday to Friday, you're going to be perfect, which allows you to deviate all weekend, which maybe, I don't know how hard you're working out. I don't know what caloric deficit you're in the rest of the week. I don't know if you're eating 900 calories per day on the other days. So when the weekend comes and you eat 3,000 calories, first of all, if you're going that drastically, you'd probably feel sick. But let's just say, benefit of the doubt, you're eating 1,300 calories, which is very, very low on a regular basis. And then by the weekend, you're like, okay, I'm going to go out and do more things. And it adds up to like 2,200 calories. Well, if you were to count it up, depending on your weight and all of these different factors, you're probably at a maintenance mode. So then you're working out, you're eating healthy, you're in this hard caloric deficit, you're doing all the things, and you're like, why don't I have progress? You don't have progress because you're maintaining your weight by keeping your calories at a maintenance level, because your weekends are so high. When you add that with the other days and divide it by 7 days, you're at a maintenance caloric place. So think about how crazy it is to work hard for 5 days and give it all up in 2. That's when I started realizing, okay, I need to maybe shift my energy to just the weekend. I need to get through the weekend not deviating. So I started putting, personally, because it was a big issue for me, I started putting a lot of energy on the weekend. If I could just not go off the rails this weekend, I'm gonna be a winner by Monday. I was just literally tunnel vision the weekend because it was that detrimental to my progress. So the more I started focusing on having better and better weekends, I started calculating more for the social outings. Okay, if I'm going to eat brunch, then I'm not going to do lunch and dinner out as well. On the previous day, I'll probably only go out once of that day, and I'll make sure that on my other meals, I'm accounting for the fact that I ate once today out and I'm going to eat once out tomorrow. Look, I know we're talking about calories a lot, and I don't mean to make you obsess over this number, but in beginning phases of bringing awareness to light in your life, if you've never done this before, right? I mean, like, I've been on and off this track for many years, so at this point, I have a little more awareness of what I'm looking at, and even to this day, when I weigh 75 grams of rice, I'm like, seriously? Because small things can creep up and quietly. Just a little more olive oil on the salad, just cooking this rice with 3 more spoons of oil than I need, just a little handful of cashews. I love cashews, but they are so high in fat. Cashews are not supposed to be eaten by more than the handful. And even that, it's a good amount of calories. It's those extra bites when you're not even hungry anymore, but you're like, oh, it's here, let me eat it. None of those really feel like a big deal individually, but it's like a little bit here, a little bit there, a little more, a little here. It all adds up, and we have to think at least on a weekly basis, not even daily. And now we're going to start getting into some bigger ones. Number 17, this is huge for me, the all or nothing thinking. Because this is a mindset one that can mess you up for a long time, not just a week, but months and years. Thinking, oh, I didn't work out this week, or I'm already eating off track. What's this one more meal? What's this one more thing? This one thing is not going to change everything. So you go all out. You go crazy on the pantry because you've been off track anyway. What's continuing off track gonna do? It's not hindering any progress. It doesn't matter. That's the all or nothing kind of mindset that will just mess you up mentally and physically, because let me tell you, when you're all in, you're like, I'm not gonna damage this progress, and I've been working really hard for this. And then when you're not working hard for this, you're not thinking about it at all. I mean, you're drinking 700 calorie drinks for breakfast and thinking that now it's time for Chick-fil-A breakfast, and then by 10 a.m. you're eating 1,000 calories. By 3 p.m. you're 3,000 calories, and by the time you go to bed, you had a 5,000 calorie day. And you might think this is hard, but on a regular American diet, I can show you very easily how to eat 5,000 calories a day. That's why I get so jealous of guys sometimes when they're in their bulking phases. I don't know, these guys that work out and they're huge, they can eat a lot. And we're just not built that way. So instead of an all or nothing mindset, you have to find a middle ground, which leads me into the identity shift. When you take care of yourself, you feel good about yourself. But when you don't take care of yourself, you don't feel good about yourself. And it's those things that happen that slowly get you to feel like you look in the mirror and you don't even recognize yourself. And that's how over time, your whole identity changes. You're not this girl that you were when you were 23, full of energy and light and jumping around and in these tiny jeans. You now see yourself as somebody totally different, when in reality, you're still that girl. You're still a baddie. You just need better habits. Which leads me to the next one, trying to be perfect. And this might be the biggest freaking trap. Perfect diet, perfect workouts, perfect trainer, perfect schedule. Perfect is exhausting. And the moment perfect goes wrong, you quit. So let's cover that. Constantly restarting. A lot of people live in what I call the restart loop. You start Monday, you fall off Friday, you promise yourself, I will get serious again next week. And the more that something like that happens, the more it becomes part of your identity. Not someone who follows through, not someone who trusts herself, someone that quits constantly, someone that restarts always. And that cycle can happen for years. The last thing I want to cover is decision fatigue. By the end of the day, your brain is tired. Look, it's not going to make the best choices for you. Let's be honest. You have literally been making decisions all day, even decisions that you don't consider, like, do I make this right on red? All of these little tiny decisions, big decisions, life decisions, family decisions, food decisions, everything. Tired brains don't want convenience. They don't. You know what a tired brain wants? A snack. You're just tired, babe. So instead of asking yourself, how do I make myself a perfect baddie? Ask yourself, how do I become a baddie with better habits? Because real change doesn't come from extreme resets. Otherwise, those New Year's resolutions wouldn't exist because everybody's been on their A game for 20 years. It comes from small decisions, and you can make a small decision right now. Walk. One more walk. One more better meal. One less late night snack. One day of showing up for yourself, for the person that you used to recognize in that mirror. Because the beauty of it is these small habits, they start stacking on each other, and sooner than later, you will be so grateful for the girl that showed up and the girl that didn't just lose weight, but the baddie that rebuilt the version of herself that she recognizes. That's what I want for you. If this video helped you see some habits that are holding you back, the next video that I'm going to link in the description will also give you some more insights. I'll walk you through a simple routine that I keep on a daily basis that helped me break this all or nothing mindset I had for myself. And if you're someone who's done starting over on Monday and that kind of mindset, like and subscribe the video and let's build together.